my ADHD family. I'm Yakini coming to you from ADHD Live. Today is another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk, and I am very excited to have Sandra today. She is a ADHDer, and we're going to just run through her journey and just talk to her about her experiences and some tips and tricks on how she manages her day. So Sandra, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your ADHD journey, and let's just get going.
Hi, well, thank you so much for having me. It's so lovely to meet you and to be here. My name is Sandra. I am Canadian. I was diagnosed when I was 40 years old. And I started writing about my ADHD, like just journey and kind of unpacking that on Instagram. And it's the ADHD Good Life. The ADHD Good Life is my handle. And it kind of just got a little bit bigger than I had anticipated and quite quickly. So I have, I primarily am on Instagram and just writing what I've learned and what I know. And I also have a podcast with the same name. And well, because my background is that I'm an educator. So I was a teacher for like 17 or 18 years and master's in educational psychology and just all of these specialties in education. So I had learned a lot about ADHD just from working with some of the kids in primary and middle school. And I had a small group of middle school boys. And then I was like, wow, we're learning this stuff along with you guys.
That's too funny.
Yeah. So, and then when at my last job, I was working full time a few years ago, it just kind of, that feeling of, I just know everything. I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. And this big opportunity for me had come up in this job. And why couldn't I do the thing that I know I could do, I've been trained to do, I love what I'm doing. Why is it so hard? And why am I falling apart?
Okay.
And that's where I kind of put everything together. So
that pretty much triggered you and said, I need to go and just see somebody and get this checked out. Is that what your turning point was?
Well, kind of like that. Well, I was doing one of those things, like I was a head of department at the school I was working at. I was doing this job that again was made for me. But I just couldn't do it. And I didn't really know where to look at first. But my little bit back into my story a little bit is that I was adopted and I was a transracial adoptee.
Okay.
So my little brother and I were adopted by white parents. My little brother was about 7 years old when he was diagnosed with ADHD, which like in the 80s, it's like unheard of because first off, for anyone in general, really, but for Black kids like that, was not normal. And when it kind of just fell apart like that for me, that was the only thing I could think of. It was the only thing that I knew about my past that I could actually think that maybe that is me, but I wasn't like him. I didn't present things like him. So I wasn't sure about it at first. So when I started looking at it about women, and I was looking for Black women first, but there's really much out there. That's another reason why I started writing on Instagram. But and I started women. I was like, oh my gosh, this does sound like me. I was pretty surprised. Yeah.
So what type were you actually diagnosed with?
Inattentive, but have impulsivity as well. So they didn't say combined, but they're like, you have hints of impulsivity.
Gotcha.
Hints, it's like bummed my whole life, Okay. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So parents, not parents, but just people in general, they struggle with going after that diagnosis, right? They say, it looks like I might have, but I'm not sure if I really want to do this. So what advice do you have just to say, you know what, just go take that step forward?
Well, for parents about themselves or for their kids?
For themselves. Right now, we're just for parents for themselves or even individuals for themselves, especially when you're at a certain age. Like for me, I was just recently diagnosed. I'm 45. So, and I wouldn't have done it unless, until my children were diagnosed first.
Totally
so
classic.
What do you have? What is your advice to those people who are even thinking about it?
Well, a couple things, like, I think, like, of course, I think self-diagnosis is valid. You know what I mean? But with ADHD, like, if you are able to try medication and, to get diagnosis to try medication, that is life changing. Like, that gives you the power to do so much more.
Mm.
And it's not about just being like, neurotypical and being better at producing this, or, having more outcomes and finished products. It's just more about being able to do more of the things that you want to do. Like, for me, getting medication, it was just like, wow, I mean, like, we don't walk around feeling kind of an underlying sense of like blah all the time. Like, that's not really a natural way to feel. Like, I just, it was life changing for me. And also because I knew, like, there was something that I knew what was happening, so I could do something about it. Like, the more that we know, the more options that we have, and not only for ourselves, but for the people around us as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So
Mm-hmm.
for parents that, so first of all, is your child diagnosed with ADHD?
No, not yet.
Not yet. So
But
you're going
it's
through the
okay.
process right now,
Yeah.
or
It's it's, I think it's a bit, because he's 6 and it's a bit tricky. But we're pretty certain. We have already, like, already had to advocate for him in his schools and stuff like this
okay.
already. So yeah, but that's eminent. Yeah, for sure.
Well, then,
Sure.
you know what? This is actually a good position to be in to ask this question. So
Mm-hmm.
there are parents who are struggling, even thinking about trying to go the direction of getting their child diagnosed, or even seeing a psychologist, or even talking to anyone. So
Mm-hmm.
what is the process that you are going through to really make that ultimate decision? And what would you suggest other parents go through? Or what are your tips around that?
I think that there's a bunch of things that we are doing. We first tried to get a referral, but he was too young. So now we are, like, I talk about my ADHD brain all the time. Like, obviously I do a lot of work with ADHDers as well. So the word is like, it's always in our house. But there are also things that we just do holistically for him as well. And, just things with him learning how to manage his emotions, for example, and, speak about them and talk about them, reflect on them. I think self-reflection is a key thing. We don't get taught that. Self-compassion, and just, we're really careful with how we talk to him, and what kind of expectations that we put on him. Just, we do watch him very carefully, because, the environment plays a huge role in how we feel about ourselves, and honestly, like, how our presentations, like, how our symptoms, like, not, oh my God, what's the word? Like, come out, So it's really important to have, the consistency in place for him, so that, he's going to bed at the same times, and things that he can count on and make sense of. So even whenever we are still going through this process of, like, because we know that we're going to have to do that. Okay. We're not going to wait until, like, he's like 13 and go, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to put medication for you because we think it's a good idea, or whatever. But we are at the same time making this kind of a normal, like, just like, it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's the way that his brain is. Like, when I take my medication, you see it, you just, like, take his vitamins, whatever, Right. It's just the way that it goes. So
That's
I
good.
think also, I just think that also too, that when we're, I was going to say, school is a really important part too, because it so easily can just, make a kid just feel awful, just like that.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I mean, Sandra, it's really interesting for me. I had to move my children out of certain school systems and and daycare systems, because they were not working with them. They were not supporting them. And once I put them in the right school system, oh my goodness, it made a huge difference.
It
A
does.
huge difference. I mean, even with the self-esteem perspective,
Mm-hmm.
like my son, I mean, he feels so much better about himself just because of how they look at him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they give him love and support, and they help him work through, like you said, certain emotions and how to handle
Mm-hmm.
certain triggers. And it's just been an
Yeah.
amazing experience.
Yeah, it really does matter. Like we're in the process too of moving our son as well to a different school because we realize like yes, he is capable. He's very intelligent, but that doesn't mean that he can't it doesn't mean that he should be 6 years old and have to have this kind of pressure on him to learn this sort of things. And it just takes that creativity and that, and that passion for like learning and living like
Yeah.
just down when like that. And I think that it just plays such a huge, takes such a huge toll.
Yeah.
And it's not worth it in the end. And like labels, and I know that we get afraid of labels of our kids. And the thing is, and I tell parents this, because from an educator's point of view, is that your child already has a label. Every child has a label, like every single one.
Mm.
I've had classes, 28 kids, they've all been had a label of something, oh, cutie, oh, sweetie, oh, here's, whatever that comes over, everyone. And it's just like, do you want to have control over what that label means or not?
Right.
Do you want to have control and be able to tell their story or not? Because if you don't, somebody else is. So if you get the knowledge and you get them the support, and even if it looks like everything is okay, to who? Like you've set their potential. If they have ADHD, if you know that, because you have it yourself and you suspect it, but you're like, but they're doing okay though. But they're getting all right grades though. But you don't actually know. You don't know. You don't know what they're capable of.
Right.
And by not giving the support, by not, helping in those other ways, or by not getting that diagnosis, you've essentially set the potential for them. Just like this.
Yeah.
That's my thought on that.
No, I agree with that. I like that. I like that. So just taking a step back to you, how do you balance it all? So having this ADHD diagnosis, being a mom, being a wife, having platforms, working a job, how do you do it all?
I do. My parent, my son is, it's some days are better than others. I go through hyper focus phases where it's like I send my son off to school and I'm like, go, 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 go. And then my son will be like, come home and I'll be like, Mom, get off your phone. Like, this is my job. I am not 100% perfect on this. I'm not going to lie. But what I found is work is a lot of grace. Like it does go in phases where I'm like, okay, I'm hyper focused on getting this project out or getting this done. And then I have to scale back. I do go into the cycle of work. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And now I'm taking a longer break and okay, I'm working again. And then like this, I do a lot of that. And that can go on like for like a couple of weeks. And then I need to take a month off or, like a month. And then I'll need to take like a couple weeks off, something like this. So I just lower key it down. And my partner's very helpful, actually. He's neurodivergent, I think, too. We think so. We try to do like what works for him. So he'll pick up the things that work best for him, and then I'll pick up the things that work best for me. And we try to keep my son in a very good routine. Like very, so he knows when he has his bath time, where he knows he goes to bed, and that helps me. If I have a little bit of outside structure, I need outside structure, or else it kind of can fall to the wayside quite quickly. So it is a work in progress. I'm not going to lie. But I also try not to take on too much as well. So I have one platform that I really, go out, and I do delegate a little bit, and I do have some hacks and yeah, I just try not to take on too much.
Okay. All right.
So
You said try.
it changes.
So how do you like put it to the side, right? It's like,
Sometimes I've got to like, yeah, sometimes I just gotta say no. I gotta say no. And sometimes I just have to like, yeah, sometimes I just fall flat on my face. And my partner's like, okay, you gotta take a break. Stop. Yeah. So it is a work in progress. And some days I do awesome and other days I don't. And
yeah,
I have to be okay with that.
exactly. No, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about your platform. So you mentioned a few things. I mean, you have your Instagram platform, you have your podcast. Even through Instagram, you go Instagram Live. I mean, you're doing a lot of really good work. So how did that even, I mean, I know it came about because of the direction of your life, but like what made you so passionate? And then, like you said, you've grown. How long have you had your platform for?
Just, over a year, about a year.
Over a year, yeah. So, wow, that's amazing. So what made you just stick with it and just become passionate about it?
I like to write. And when I first got my diagnosis, like I just didn't really know what to do. And so I just started writing.
Nice.
And I just kept writing. And it did get, and I wrote every day for 6 months. And that's how I stuck with it, every day for 6 months. And then and that was because I was afraid that if I stopped, I would not start. And it got to the point where, okay, I could write more, and it's not, I wasn't going to stop. And I trusted myself that I wasn't going to stop. But I didn't expect it to be like it was, like it is. I kind of thought that I would work or do something online. I had thought I would be working more with children because I was coming from a teaching background with all that experience. But the more that I started working about it and learning about it, the more upset I was getting because I realized that, it took me like 6 months in and I was like, wow, there's not very many other Black women on this platform at all. And Boots knew Renee, and I was like, I love Renee, and I'm just like, but that was it. Like when I started learning about it, looking for other Black women, that was the only one. And I thought, I didn't know it was like that, come from my own background, just, growing up with white people, because that's what I did. I didn't know it was like that. And then I started learning about social justice. I started learning about intersectionality. I started looking deeper into the ADHD industry and just kind of seeing like what was going on with this, like what's the story, and looking at bigger accounts and just trying to learn more. And then in June, it was Amplify Black Voices, and that I happened to be one of the only Black women writing about mental health with ADHD at that time. So this week, I basically got brave enough to start writing about ADHD while Black, and started writing about a lot more of these struggles, just things like looking at the difference in diagnosis for white children versus Black children, and looking at why Black children were being diagnosed with more severe conditions, and more like, just like conduct disorders and ODD, rather than ADHD, or whether they were just being told it's just trauma and you just, there, and then go solve that yourself. And then looking at just even at Black women and being at work. And I remember doing a post where I was like, these are the things that I think about whenever I go to work. And I had these kind of things, listed, about 4 or 5 things. Oh, look, we all have that. And I post 2, which was like a slide that was just like rampant of all of these things I had to do about race. That what I'm thinking about when I'm going to work, like don't touch my hair, just things like that, and keep my voice down, and don't. And I realized that, these things weren't being talked about. We weren't talking about the impact, the inside of what we deal with having ADHD and what we have to balance and manage and remember what we are allowed to present and what we're not, depending on the oppressions that we face. And it wasn't being mentioned at all. I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit around here, but like there's, and the other thing too was that it was all about, gender roles, but only two genders. And I couldn't understand where all the information was. Okay, I'm not really on YouTube, maybe it's all there, but I'm also on Twitter, and like, that's one of the biggest ADHD, communities, and it's just like, and I just, yeah. And so it kind of blew up a little bit about that. And that's when I started writing more about like what was happening internally and these things that we weren't seeing beyond like RSD and stuff like this, so that's kind of where it got. And I think that's kind of how it kind of blew up a little bit.
It is nice. I mean, it's really nice even to hear your lies and, you talk about, I mean, it's the truths, I really enjoy listening to your lives. I mean, they're very honest and I like that. They are, they're very straight. They're very honest. I mean, so it's nice to see a platform like that. So I enjoy it. It's really good. It cracks me up. I mean, it's like, oh, like you are just straight. It cracks me up. So yeah, that's good.
Oh my gosh. I was saying tonight, I just did one because I do one once every 2 weeks. I was like, you know what? I should probably watch some more lives because I'm pretty sure they're not like this. Everyone's like, it's all right. Like,
that's the way it's supposed to be. Videos. That's why you're growing. Because it's awesome. No, they're really, really good. And it's funny because I listened to the RSD one, and it's funny because it actually made me want to talk about that topic because I have another interview coming up, and I'm going to talk about that specifically, like the connection and the differences between African Americans and our counterparts, the white Americans, and how we perceive RSD. And because I even think about my experiences where I actually can see myself having two different experiences, the rejection of a person as an African American, but then I also remember, my own rejection and the situations that I went through that could represent RSD. But I wouldn't even thought about, because first of all, I've never heard of RSD. Just to the point, right?
That's the point.
Like, what is this? So, but the honesty, but you had me thinking it through. Like, is it truly RSD? Is it me as a person who's gone through rejection? Or, like you have me thinking about it. And I like that. So that it was really, really good. So I'm going to actually be talking about that due to your topic.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, specifically, we're going to discuss that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's funny because that was something I just kind of went off on that live one day. It was like, hey, here's a thought. Because I didn't know if that was like, if anybody else thought that, if anyone else saw that. But it was something that I just really wondered. And I could see why it would be like that though. Like I could see why it would be Black women going, no, like, and it's not even like just BIPOC women in general is going, what is RSD? Like it just not even having like but just realizing like, oh, rejected sensitivity. And even with some of my clients, we were talking about this and I was explaining what I thought. And they were like, you know what? And this is, AAPI women. So, and they're like, you know what? Like, yeah, like it just because of, this cultural backgrounds and, AAPI women, like a lot being invisible, so already so they have that different sense of rejection as well. So it's just like kind of a norm. And so when they hear about rejection sensitivity, they're like, oh, but right. even in describing it,
right.
Like, but is it because of this trauma that
right?
They even go into the trauma. Right. And so I was like, you know what, maybe it is. And yeah, so I don't really know, but you know what, how they thought of RSD? It was like like just asking a bunch of people and making, you know, this is what this is. This is what we think this is. So it could be anything, actually. So my hypothesis could be right. I don't know. But I think it could be, because I can see it. I can see it because if you grow up thinking that everything is awesome and that you're awesome because of, you know, just how society is, as, you know, if you're white, you know, woman or white male, you know, that's the way it is. We're in a white supremacist society, like culture, you know? And then all of a sudden you can't live up to what you're entitled to. And you're getting all of this negativity.
Right.
Like, of course you're going to feel rejected. It's going to be bad.
Right. Because
you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be getting all of it. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, and that was really good. So thank you for bringing that up. So, because it literally, you had me thinking, I'm like, okay, all right. So where is my rejection? You know, it's like, what group is it in? Right. So, and I could actually see, yes, this is my experience here. And then I could see, you know, these are my experiences where I felt rejection differently as a Black American versus as somebody who was rejected by peers, you know what I mean? Or the sense of rejection, or always felt like, you know, why wasn't I good enough for X, you know what I mean? So I could see those things, but again, if you hadn't talked about it, I wouldn't even thought it through. So that I'm glad you brought that up. So that's why I said I'm gonna use it as a topic. I thought that was good.
No worries. Yeah, for sure. I think that it's something that I have to explore a little bit more myself too, but it's definitely something there, I think.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so so I just wanted to wrap things up, and before I do, I just wanted to see, is there anything that you would like to share with the audience, with the parents, in terms of any tips or tricks, whether it's themselves going through the process of having ADHD, or even though your child isn't officially diagnosed, the process of what do I do if my child has been diagnosed with ADHD? Just any last minute thoughts around that.
Okay. I think it's important to get well versed on ADHD and your child's ADHD in particular. You know, what their triggers are, where their strengths are, where they might need more support. And, you know, how you think about their difference, how you approach them being different is an impact on how they'll grow up feeling about being different. So if you are not out there advocating, if you're going, oh, well, it's not, you know, let's not call it ADHD, let's call, you know, this sort of thing, and try and hide it, or we don't label, you know, whatever, that is sending a message about what it means to be different. And so I think that is something that is really important to really consider about that. Like, how do you advocate for your child so that they know that who they are has always been enough?
Nice. And then if, do you have any types of like resources? So any, you know, books that you have read or YouTube channels that you could recommend, anything in terms of just some research? If they wanted to do some research, what are some of those things that you would recommend they look at?
I am thinking of, I'm trying to think of, oh my gosh, I just went completely blank there. See, it's different. I feel like it's different because I have this teaching background. So I'm just like, I had all of this stuff in my head beforehand. I didn't go through like, oh my gosh, my child has ADHD, so I'm looking through, I did a lot of this stuff as an adult for myself.
Or even from that perspective, that's fine too.
I think one of the things that's really important for me is that, you know, I like to hear from people who actually are, you know, like actually do have ADHD, and just real people. I enjoy social media. I think that it's great to get into community. I'm big on podcasts as well. So Motherhood and ADHD is one that I started listening to first. That's with Patricia Sung, and she's just lovely and just so helpful as well. And she has lots of good, like, quick little tips. I've really enjoyed her work. And that, again, I found her on Instagram, and ADHD Parent as well. Was another one I found on Instagram. So I try to find real people, and I hang out on Instagram a lot. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, very cool. And then that leads to my last question is, please share your, your Instagram handle and any other website or however somebody can get a hold of you if they have questions.
Thank you. You can find me on Instagram at the ADHD Good Life. I have a podcast of the same name, so ADHD Good Life Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And I'm also on Twitter at the ADHD Good Life as well. And go to my Instagram bio and you can pick up my ebook, actually. It is on self-compassion, and it is good. And it really just digs into, just looking and finding ways to actually feel like better about yourself. Because on this journey, even whenever after you get diagnosed and it's like that part's over and you're like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to make all of this work? We forget, we don't get taught how to be compassionate, treat ourselves with a lot of compassion, because we need it and it helps. So it's free. So check that out.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'll also put that in the comments. So that's good. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I thank you. I thank you so much, Sandra, for coming on. It was really, really great talking to you. You're just that.
Anytime.
It was enjoyable.
Anytime. Anytime. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you. It's been wonderful. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. So thank you all for joining us. If you would like to hear more videos like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. And don't forget to hit that notification bell, because every time a new video comes out, it will notify you. So thank you and have a wonderful day. All right. Bye, Sandra.
Bye.